Hello again, welcome to another episode. So I have been really sorry. I was promised to do a video about to use with ChatGPT to discuss some topics that I had to do the presentation PowerPoint last time, but I'll be doing it very soon. Um, I thought I might just do this video first because I find that I've been fascinating about some of the aspect of topics like meaning of life. Today, I think we should discuss the issue in regards about the problem of Three main issues. One is the science versus God. And I think the fascinating picture in this is that I think that it has not been unpacked to that deepest picture, which I will be unpacking this a bit. The second point is cultural Christian. And I just want to say to some people, really, I'm so um, fascinated that I have come across some points that really concerns me to a level because I think there is serious problem here. Um, and my third point is about acceptance of meaning of life, which is the main topic of our discussion here today. And I think that not many people accepted their life in this earth as their first chance. And if the Bible says you have two options, one is you be with God or without God, but you need to be first ticking the box. There's two. I think that some people have really missed that option, which we'll be talking about. One is that they said, well, you either be with God or without God, but that's just general claim. To me, that's not the answer that I have like coherent answer. So I think that the answer could be, we could say that there is two options in this life. One is that that they have accepted their meaning of life, whether they're Christian, atheist, religious, perspective, whatever. And then if they rejected God or accepted God, then they will be separated or being with God. So these are two different things. Being you be with God or be separated from God. But only if you accept your meaning of life, which I haven't really accepted my meaning of life. And that's why I do these things because I really want to discuss this curiosity because I'm still searching. And I think the second point here is if you like I think that if some people didn't accept themselves, like people who commit suicide, they deserve second chance. Or how many chances until they have accepted themselves and then they know themselves more depends on their worldview. Whether they're an atheist, whether they're an agnostic, whether they're believers. So you can be an atheist, but you don't accept your meaning of life. And you can be an atheist, but you accept your meaning of life. As defined as just without God. There's no God. That's why so many people as didn't unpack this picture. And I think I would want to highlight this. Let's start with our first topic. Is science and God in conflict? And we'll come back to this topic at the end. I think the answer is it can be. And I can find more research. I'm doing my research and I think there is points. One, from my psychology perspective of research in university, I think that many people I've been thinking about this recently and I have been thinking to myself, how important is genetic in free will? And can genetic be the robot of our free will? That's so many questions that people don't like to ask these questions. And you see, I've been listening to Frank Turk and I've been reading C.S. Lewis as well, and the Book of Miracle, and I've been fascinated which we will talk about later on when in my other videos, how I'm gonna unpack the C.S. Lewis points. Um, but I have been fascinated that the way that the conflict in science and God has been fascinating to me, because when we say that we humans don't have free will, we are saying we don't have free will because our genetics is more disease and more problem, or predisposition, or that it's leading us to make that choice because of bias, disease. So if you have free will, you cannot be, to me, again, that's a definition that I have discussed with people. You cannot be just, it's not about just influence, but it's also the impact, the damage. For example, I'll give you one example. Some people have said to, and they they have a brilliant example. They said if someone comes and damage your car, which the car has some free will to do its job because of mechanism, but that's just an example of a car. If someone come and damage your car and you say, oh yeah, regardless of the issue, my car still have free will to run on the road. Well, it depends what you mean free will. Should you ask the car first before you do it? And I think that's a very important picture. And my fascinating point to this issue is, of course the car is gonna be ruined. And how the car is gonna be damaged. And so I think that the point here is that um, if the car is damaged, how is it gonna go on the road and has free will to do its job? It cannot be. Because if it has free will, it cannot be damaged, and then you expect it to be saying, oh yeah, you have a free will. Now, the interesting thing, ladies and gentlemen, is we talking about believing in God. Not just drink water, not just use a key, not just walking, not just running. And so I think that the issue here is that I think that if you say you have the ability to choose God or not, you have making a general claim for all people. Like Frank, it fascinates me, Frank Turk, to a degree. You see, again, we're talking about predestination issue and the fascinating topics where God has chosen that person, and therefore, if he rejects God, he will go to hell. What I'm fascinated in, and you see, this is now the argument of this predestination versus science. It's drawing a parallel here to say, well, just because, like, you see, this is why I don't believe God knows the future because of this. And some people don't believe in luck, but I believe in luck because of earthquake happened recently in the Philippines, and now I might have heard in Korea as well. As well, there was a short earthquake or somewhere in an area. Might be wrong. It depends on the news. They might say false news, but I think here this is a fascinating picture. You see, this is a mechanism. There's a mechanism that can survive. Species can survive. A mechanism. And I think aligning this, you see, this is the interesting topic that I am fascinating about. We are talking about free will, God knowing, and your ultimate choice in conclusion. You see, this is what many people tell you. You have a free will to choose God or not, regardless of the mechanism, and God will give you two options. You accept him or reject him. That's the conclusion. I don't think that's the picture. Because what I'm saying here is this. The fascinating topic about this picture is that we are saying that we have free will. We have done our research. We have done our points, and some people will say, oh sorry, and some and we didn't find God. And some people will critique that and say, well, you never meant to be for God. You never been chosen for God. Then I'll question it. Are you really meant to be for God? But if he's searching still, why do you need to judge him? That to me is a crazy picture that I'm drawing a parallel here between science and who knows, maybe he has mental health issues, mental illness, and now he has a horrible disease and he got confused of faith. There is no perfect faith in this universe. As many people have told me, an apologetic, a Christian, even an atheist, there is no perfect faith. And so the predestination one, I think it fails quickly, even without me doing research now. And that's why, well, I'm going to show my research, but I'm just going to state the issues first based on my ideas to you that I think that it fails because what it's doing is this. You see, we have entered the postmodernism debate, the Enlightenment debate, the science debate in this modern world. So huge now, it's rising up high. And so what I'm seeing here, the picture is these arguments. For example, take three claims that science can defend itself against those claims, and that's why you can't judge that situation on Earth. One is to say that you have only one on this life, one chance. It's like saying if my car is broken on the road, therefore you have one chance. If you damn it, if you stopped, I'll get a taxi home. It's absurdity, and I don't believe in that. So this is one claim for that it's getting abolished because it doesn't hold water. You have one chance in life. If you ruin it, you're gone. You're going to hell. No, it's abolished. The argument doesn't hold standard. Your faith is not holding properly because maybe he was in mental health issues and he committed suicide. How can you judge that picture? How can you say that person had this one chance in his life without giving him a chance to talk and give his side of you before you say, oh, he never meant to be God. Richard Dawkins never meant to be for God. How do you know that? You see, you taking one point aspect, the biblical point here, it's like saying a judge will listen to two stories. He will listen to this story and he'll listen to this story. If you don't listen to both stories, you're going to take a biased argument. And that's why I think I've been listening to Frank Turk cross-examine, and he is very biased because, I mean, biased at point when he say, God knows Richard Dawkins will not believe and this person believe because he come with cross-examine. How do you know that? Is it because of your predestination bias? It just strikes me to a point that you say there is one chance in this life. If you become atheist, that's it. Done properly. And the second point that doesn't hold argument is the free will defense. People will say you have free will. Regardless of your situation, you have free will. It's the science is protecting it because of the mental health and issues and the consciousness. there is still a backup defense that he might argue that case against in heaven and say my mental health has not has it's a horrible disease. It's an awful disease like schizophrenia and many other cases in psychology. And then you say you have free will regardless of the situation. It's like saying to a car, the mechanic of the top car, it's broken, but it's okay. You have free will. Can you walk straight down? Oh, let's just use a good example. Tire. The tires in the front. Your tire is not working properly, and you're driving a car, and you say, oh, well, before you drive a car, make sure you say, oh, you have a free will to do your job so that I can get the mechanism going. How can the mechanism of a tire will work if the broken tire is broken? So we're still generalizing people, and I think that's one of the problems in the Christian faith to take it serious about these problems before they judging their case. You know, it just what are you gonna argue for? Are you God? This Richard Dawkins rejected God. What if he has a horrible disease that's making him drive to that conclusion? I'll talk about that in a minute about C.S. Lewis' point. The third claim many people will say, and it's been defended again, um, which is the issue of um the essential of hell and heaven. I think many people have really started to become extraordinary. The claim of the issue here is yes, there is, if we can believe in hell, we can believe in heaven and faith. Um, but I think that the whole point of can science interrupt faith in God? What we mean by that, ladies and gentlemen, is mental health, mental illness, biology, genetics. My mother has, diabetes and schizophrenia. And so if I have diabetes, I got that from my mother. And genetics is a big thing that plays a role in free will, or interrupts it. Um, if you interrupt someone, how can you expect him to make a decision? If I interrupt someone studying, who could come at me and punch me in the face or try to punch me in the face, because you are leading someone, I asked someone a question. I was talking to him. He's one of my friends. Now he's just, I don't know. We don't talk anymore. We've been friends for years, for about 4 years, 5 years since I was young age. Um, I've asked him about Hitler. If you change Hitler location before the Nazis and World War II, do you think if for example he grew up in Australia, do you think he still do the same thing as he does in Germany? And he said the answer is no. And he was Christian. Now that's a very fascinating picture because what we're saying here, a claim of science, is what we're saying is if Hitler has a mental health or illness, which we don't know yet, no person has said he has mental health or illness, except I'm ruling out this theory. I mean, they could have said that, but they didn't go that much deep because of people want to be general. They don't want to go the deep general picture. And I think one of the fascinating picture in this issue is if you remove Hitler and Saddam Hussein in Iraq, which he had done in 19, not, I think, can't remember the date, would he still do the same thing as he did in history? Now, what fascinates me about this picture is the claim of God created him in Germany. Why didn't he create him in Australia? Something very interesting about humanity, and that's why I'm interested in psychology. Why does God create someone in a horrible issue, and then when he acts bad and rejects God or turns evil, God says to him, "You're gonna be punished. You're gonna be going to hell." And I know Hitler done horrible things, but I'm just saying the question still raises a point. And that's why that evolution argument stands, because you would say evolution has led to him being born in Germany, and genetics has had to grow and things like that. And that's why I think God didn't interfere with evolution. God is not inside the earth, he's outside the earth, and he doesn't live in earth. He can still exist. We're not saying he doesn't. Like you can be a theist, but I think the point here is that it still is an important question. Why does this person grow up in this issue and then rejects God? And then God knows about it and then he sends them to hell? What an absurdity argument. Take a look at this argument. I'll give you one more issue and you can think about this idea. The absurdity argument of two issue is this, which I'm gonna move on to the next topic soon. Um, the argument is, so I knew, let's say I'm one of the Charm TV show drama that happened, I think, in America, and I'm Phoebe. Okay, I think was Phoebe was the one who knows the future. Yeah, I think so. My memory. Sorry if I was wrong, but I know that drama. If I know that like the girl that does that, she foresees the future and she protects that person if she sees he's gonna get hurt by evil. That's supernatural, by the way. But C.S. Lewis is interesting. He's very interesting in his Book of Miracle because he rules out between naturalism and supernatural, but he doesn't. It fascinates me C.S. Lewis didn't um talk about Charmed. I don't know whether it happened during C.S. Lewis or not, but that's another story that is fascinating. So let's say I'm Phoebe, and I know my friend is gonna get hurt. And what happens is I go ahead and protect him. Sorry, I foresee him. It was all my vision told me, and I had a what did she call? Had had a premonition that I saw him. He's gonna get hurt. My friend is gonna get hurt, and it's true. It happened, and I gotta protect him. Um, well, or not. Okay. And the fascinating picture is if I don't protect my friend from this premonition, I think you call it premonition. Forgive me for saying it wrong. I have to look it up again, that word. But it's like, you see a vision. And my friend had two options. One, I could save him. Two is not, which relates to God, of course. God foresees the mechanism, oversees the mechanism, but he doesn't do anything with it. And so what happens is he doesn't interfere. So if I have protected my friend, maybe he could have done things differently from this horrible evilness. Or maybe earthquake. I don't know. But it's interesting. Charmed couldn't stop natural disaster, but it could stop evil. That's very interesting. If I have not protected my friend, something could go wrong. Something could go wrong because what happens is, well, you see, this is again interesting because God says God has given everyone freedom. Even the universe itself has mechanism freely to do what it wants to do, and God is not interfering with it. But how can an earthquake has free will to do an earthquake or not, but God is not stopping it? Does the earthquake have free will? Does the tsunami have free will? Does the volcano have free will? Well, people will say it's only mechanism, but the own mechanism led to that free will, but that's out of control situation. So how can you say free will? Because you've got to be in the consciousness to say you have free will. That's the definition. And we can look at that up later. That's my research. You have to have consciousness to make free will. You have to have meaning of life to accept God or not. If you're in depression, if you're in mental health, if you're in just gender dysphoria, if you're in LGBT dysphoria, if you're in schizophrenia disorder, if you have anxiety issue, if you have symptoms that are impacting your ability, that is not free will. That's a lack of free will. You can say free will, but make sure you say a lack of free will. It's a weakness of free will. You have no neutral ability to make a choice of free will. You have no freedom above. There's a hierarchy of free will, as we discussed during the last topic. Let's move on to another topic. I know that we've been a bit talking about this, but I want to leave you with this, ladies and gentlemen, about science versus humanity. Can science in mental health issues and mental illness, in genetics, in chemistry, in neurological problems, if you have all the problems, can it be against God's creation? There's two different things we're looking at here. God's creation and against God. Science in conflict with God, science in conflict with God's creation. So that could be science in God's creation, impacting the gift that he has given itself because of the mechanism in cursed world, or it's versing God as well, which we'll talk about later on the topics. Make sure you keep that in mind. But what we mean by science against God is psychology, psychiatrist, biology, chemistry. Those are the four main points. History can be as well, but I think there is a ability that stands. Okay, so those are your research. Can biology, chemistry, neurology, psychiatrist, um, psychology or psychiatrist, in which is all of them is science, be against God's creation and God's free will, against God, against creation? Because what you're saying here, the claim is that in the Bible, that it says you have one chance in this life and you come to judgment. But that's just general claim. What if he had mental health issue? What if he was sick? What if he committed suicide? What if he didn't like this life? What if he didn't accept his meaning of life? What if he didn't accept his free will? That he believed he has free will. What if he doubted this life and his parents and his relationship and his partner and his love, and he doesn't accept himself and he doesn't love himself? What if he doesn't accept the hope of death? What if he doesn't accept the morality? There's no meaning of life. It's a mystery. What if he doesn't accept his born age? What if the birth location, like he was born, for example, in horrible issues in Iraq or Syria or um, I don't know, China or Japan or whatever, and he didn't accept the issue of growing up? What if he didn't accept his biology? What if he didn't accept his environment? How can you say he has one chance and that's it? He come to judgment. But ladies and gentlemen, let me just leave you one thing about this. Judgment doesn't mean in God. Judgment means on person too. The person, if he comes to judgment and God fixes his free will in heaven, or let's say he was mental ill, he had schizophrenia on earth and he rejected God, and he comes to judgment with God, and he says to God, when we say judgment, it's not God is just judging someone. He has to hear his side as well, because that's ability of, well, what's the point of talking about? And another thing as well, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, the issue of people when they say they have they have um Frank Check says if all the molecule and physics and the law of physics is driving me to make that conclusion, why should I believe anything that comes from physics? Um, why should I believe to be an atheist? I think that's an interesting question, which we're going to talk about later. And he says, I never got the answer to that question. I think it's not just about believing it's true or not. So, because you're saying you have one chance in life to accept God or not, but you don't understand the psychology, the psychiatrist issues, the neurological problem, the genetics, the liberal issues, the liberal arts problem of the world life big cycle, the geography, all the life big cycle. You cannot say that person rejected God, never meant to be for God. If God is gonna, if watching this universe, what's gonna turn out, how do you know this guy is gonna go to hell? You don't know his life. You don't know his history. You never met him. I mean, even if you met him, you don't know his born age. How did he grow up? You don't know what he will say. He has to give an account his situation, his ability, his what does he think about the meaning of life, first of all, before he come to judgment? If he didn't accept the meaning of life, which we're going to talk about the third topic at the end, part three, what's the point of talking about judgment and punishment and all of it's like saying a criminal didn't accept himself in the street. Well, he calls himself criminal, or he's been in criminal, and he went to prison. But he didn't accept his life, his meaning of life. He committed suicide in jail. What's the point? And then you say, but that person is still going to continue to be judged in hell and punished. And there's two possible ways. You either go with God or without God. That's a general claim. The argument doesn't stand to me. Because if you don't take the serious issues of psychology, mental health, mental illness, biology, all of those things into account, the evidence, what's the point of believing in that faith? You're not taking that faith into serious consideration. Why should I believe you if you judge other people? So you are not believing someone could have that biological problem that cannot exercise his free will during that time to accept God or not because of his situation. You can say he can drink. You can say can open the key. You can say he can eat. But you cannot say he has free will to choose God or not because you don't know if he has mental health issues or genetics problem that led him to that situation, which is a bias. I call that in my mind free will. Bias free will. It's not his free will. It's a bias free will. It's a weakness. It's not his ability. So if you don't take that into consideration, what's the point of discussing this with you? Because you're not open to anything else. I realized what I will do is I'll break this session into three parts. So I'll end that session now and then I'll open another topic for um the issue of um culture Christian, and I'll open a topic of the the meaning of life. Okay? And then you can guys have a think about what I have discussed with you today. It's really nonsense to me because what you're saying here is, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude this kind of problem, the issue of science and God, to say that this person is an atheist and he died, so all atheists is going to hell, all agnostic is going to hell, all Catholic is going to one more point I'm gonna make in this next topic. If your son or daughter is an atheist, don't you wish them to go to heaven if they died and never accepted Christ? We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned, and I'm going to record the next video about this fascinating topic.